Okay. So today we're going to do something a little different.
So we actually have a guest joining us for the first time, which is exciting and also nerve-wracking because we've never done this before. So bear with us.
We're just a little nervous, but as you guys know, we tackle a theme every month. And for the past 3 episodes, we've been talking about different themes of friendships. And on today's episode, we're going to have a guest who's going to delve deeper with us about all the secrets he has to share about friendships and his learning experiences.
So without further ado, we'll bring our guest on. Akash, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. How's it going, everybody? I'm Akash Pandey, and I am 32 years old. I was a teacher for a number of years, transitioned into education technology, where I currently work. But I also started my own podcast about a year and a half ago and have been dabbling in podcasting in the audio world for the last year and some change.
So basically, he's going to be our guest, and then he's going to tell us exactly everything we did wrong and teach us how to do this the right way.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm so nervous right now. I'm just like, oh my God, Apoorva, say the right things and ask him the right things because I don't know how this is going to go.
You feel like you're like a student about to present to a teacher?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Akash, you're going to have to put your teacher hat on and help us today.
You know what? My philosophy on podcasting is it should reflect you. You know, your personality should shine through. So just be yourselves, and that's the best approach.
I feel like that was the most teacher thing you could have ever said.
I was literally thinking about it in my head. I was like, yeah. Professor on. Yeah. Got it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and being our first guest. We're so excited, I think, especially with this topic that's been very near and dear to our hearts just as we've gotten older. So our first topic of the month was just kind of friendships and talking about how we've started to notice friendships changing once we entered our 20s and kind of progressed from very early 30s to kind of our late early to mid 30s, if that's even like a word or a frame of time. But kind of just like the challenges that we've started to encounter, observation we've started to make, and want to talk to you a little bit more about what you really went through when it came to friendships in your 20s, and get some advice from you on that too, just for us and for our listeners as well.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. So I think the first thing, honestly, we would just love to know about or from you is just a kind of a reflection, I guess, about your friendships in your 20s. I think one thing that Apoorva and I both have started to kind of learn is one, I think our own values are solidifying a little bit more, and we've seen that we look for people with the same values, but we've also seen a lot of friends naturally drop off and people kind of supplement their places, but it's been an interesting yet painful journey. So would love to just kind of know what your path was like, because I know also as a guy, I feel like it's kind of different.
Yeah, no, I definitely can reflect on my early 20s in particular and then think a little bit about how it morphed. You know, the interesting thing for me is like I went to school in California. I went to college in California, not far from where I went to high school. So I grew up in Santa Cruz, a small beach town, and about 70 miles north was Berkeley, where I went to college. And, you know, graduating from there, moved to San Francisco. So I was literally in this like 70-mile radius for a good, 22 years of my life. And I hit somewhat of a wall. I remember when I was going to a lot of birthdays in my early 20s that were at like the same 4 bars in San Francisco, seeing the same 12 to 15 people. It was, for me, like cool, nice that I had that, but I also started to feel this desire to go away and like be in a place where I didn't know many people. And I ended up actually moving to Chicago 2 years out of college, partly for that, like as a life, as just a life experience to be in a new place and meet new people and kind of start from scratch, so to speak. And it didn't feel like an escape for me. Like I still had really good relationships. It wasn't like a beef that caused me to run away. But I think that then that added the challenge of like, hey, how do I maintain my friendships from a distance? You know, and I remember being 1 year in, I lived by myself in Chicago and feeling like, man, should I get a roommate? Like, you know, do I want a roommate?
Yeah.
Missing like, the homie time, you know, and like just
Yeah.
like being able to watch a game on the weekend, being able to go call a few people up and play basketball. And so I think, you know, one thing to understand sometimes in any point of your life is sometimes the grass is greener. Like, be careful what you wish for, right? You're going to be like, I want to be in a new place and start from scratch, but then it could be challenging to meet new people and build some of those friendships. And so I definitely went through that in my like early to mid 20s. And I can talk a little bit about how I kind of kept up with my college friends and built some of those relationships, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that was great. I know one thing it's funny that you say how you kind of like stayed within your bubble, because Apoorva and I always talk about how we're urban nomads. So like consciously and unconsciously, we're urban nomads. So we've kind of gone through the moving somewhere new a lot. Not fun. Still, each time we do it, I feel like we have the same experience, but
we've gone through like the phases of moving into a new city, feeling the city out, going through like that cycle of emotions. It's funny that I was actually didn't mean to interrupt you, Rhea, but really wanted to jump in there, Akash, because whenever you said, you know, that moving to a new city is challenging, it's funny you mentioned that, because in our last episode, we were just talking, one of our takeaways was how you know, it's okay to feel overwhelmed when you move to a new city, because it's not going to be like the easiest fit. Like, you know, it's going to be a change and you have to settle, and it's gonna involve a lot of emotions. So really glad you said that. I think we're doing something right there, Rhea.
Did you feel validated?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's real. It's definitely real. Yeah. So the question you asked, remind me about.
I was like, wait a second, where did my question go? I think I want to just kind of dive a little bit more into, as you did, because you moved to a new city and you were different time zones. How did you keep up with your friends? And did you see any changes or anything within those relationships?
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the big things I did with my close friend circle is just put a yearly trip on the calendar. And maybe this happened organically. I can't really remember how exactly, but it ended up being Memorial Day weekend, you know, end of May, where we just, well, first that year I invited people to come to Chicago and said, hey, come through, like, let's have a weekend together, a long weekend. And then I think that might have solidified, like, let's do this again next year. Let's do this again the year after. We did like New Orleans. I think we did like something in the Bay. I mean, it didn't last for a long time because we all got in relationships, and like that's a different, you know, stage in like how to maintain friendships. But I do think that was one thing that helped. Another thing is a very guy thing, but we have like a fantasy football league that we like started in college, and it's lasted. And the funny thing is, some of those guys, like, I don't communicate with outside of the like 4 months of football season, like for no reason. For no reason other than like they were a friend of a friend in college, or like they lived in this house we lived in senior year, and I like them, we're cool, but like we live in two different cities and they're not one of my like 5 or 6 closest friends. And thus I'm glad we have the fantasy league, because I can keep up and we can, you know, talk some smack here and there. But I mean, that kind of speaks to the reality of like friendships in your 20s, which is that the circle tightens, you know? And maybe in college you're like, I had so many friends and I could go and see this person on a just, you know, moment's notice, but that's not how it is in your 20s, you know, especially you both urban nomads. Like, I'm sure it's even less of a thing where you're seeing people. And so I think that's just a reality that you confront, and it's okay. Like I'm okay with that, but it's just something that will happen, and then you kind of decide how to maintain within that circle.
Is that something you struggled with, or do you have any advice for anyone, I guess, going through that phase of tightening it? Because I think personally, I can speak for myself, like I found it getting smaller, and some people not being in that who I always thought would be when it tightened, but it just didn't organically fit anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that the reality is, like, if it's someone who you want to maintain that relationship with and you feel it drifting, then the ball's in your court, and you have to be mindful of that, right? I think it's kind of corny, kind of cheesy, but I remember one of my friends saying, like, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Like, that's just a piece of wisdom that has stuck with me. Like, and sometimes I find that my closest friends are people I really respect, and people who, there's a reciprocal relationship there where they also have respect for me. At least I feel like it. Maybe it's not the reality, but I hope so. And I think that that's where, if you're feeling attention, if you're feeling like, I wish we were closer, then it just will take some more work, and I think sometimes, especially in this like social media era, where we like keep up by like watching each other's stories, like we think that we're in each other's lives, but it takes a little more work to actually be in people's lives.
Totally.
Yeah, it's not that occasional DM that you slip in and say, hey, how's it going, miss your face, sending love to you, but it's more than that. Yeah. It's funny, my brother and I we were getting a drink last night, and I was telling him, God, I have no friends in Chennai now because, I'm back and I moved out, and, I've grown up, and folks have just left their home and they've gone wherever, and all that's left is a couple of high school friends of mine that maybe I kept up with in high school but never did now. And he just said, Apoorva, you're like 6 years older than you were when you left at 17, and these people that you think aren't your friends could be in a complete different headspace right now. They're a lot more mature, so there's nothing wrong with just going on a drink with them, or like getting dinner with them and seeing how they are as people and reconnecting, because that's a way to make friends. It's, you don't have to seclude yourself in one house and just tell yourself, oh, you don't have friends, and not make the effort.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that that's a good point. Something that definitely I can share is, like, you should be open to new people being part of your circle. Some of my closest friends are people I met in my 20s, in a work context, one of them, but we ended up like living together. I think actually a couple of them work context initially like brought us together, but then it's been like, travel, making trips, building outside of that. But you also made me think of actually one of my closest friends in college who I lived with sophomore year. We lived together senior year. In our early 20s, like, we were just never in the same place. Like, I was in the Bay those 2 years. He was in New York. He came back to the Bay when I left for Chicago. And so I think you also need to be open to the idea that you might be distant for a time, but the kind of relationship that y'all had in college is still going to be there and still going to be, a critical part of what connects you. Because like now, actually, I went to New York this last weekend, and he and his wife were there, and now he kind of lives in the Bay, and we spend time together. But there was a good 5-6 years there in the early 20s where like we didn't see much of each other. Work was very busy and all those things. And I might have been in that headspace of like, man, we're not that close anymore. But as time has passed and we've like done our part, it hasn't just been like organic that we've like stayed close, but we're still tight, because of that history.
That is actually a really good segue into, I think, the next kind of question we have for you is, at 30, do you have any advice that you would have given a younger you in terms of friendships in general during your 20s?
Not that we're calling you out that you're old or anything. Just want a bit of tea here for us.
30 is the new 20.
It is.
That's what my brother said when he turned 30, and I was like, that's what the 30-year-olds say.
Yeah, exactly. No one says that when they're in their 20s. So this may be just like the way I think. Like I don't go back and say, I wish I'd done this necessarily. I do really think that in your 20s, it's a good time to make some mistakes and further to be, a little bit of messiness, as long as you're, acting responsibly and able to like be accountable when you're slipping up, if you do slip up. I think in general, like one interesting topic we can get into is ghosting, like just like texting and like not responding.
Oh my God.
And I think, yeah. And I think that's one like thing I wish I did better. Maybe still in the present, I do better, is just like be more responsive in texts and just like reach out. Like I find that like if I just call someone up, they are often like surprised. They might like text me back like, "You good?" or like, "What's up?" But like it's kind of my style to like get on the phone with someone and just like talk to them. But I one, I don't do it enough, and two, it's something I wish I'd done more, is just set up more times to just like catch up on the phone and shoot the shit. It doesn't always have to be like deep conversation. It can just be like sports and movies and catching up on pop culture. But I do think that it's a good idea. Just like if you think of someone and you're like, "Oh, I wonder how they're doing," hit them up. Like that, it's like that simple. Like we overthink things, but like I think that's actually just like a really decent thing to do as a human being. And if you're already thinking of them, like let them know. And I think that then it can spark something, Actually, I just did this yesterday because I was mentioning this. I worked on a piece for public radio, and it's about this musician who a friend of mine introduced me to like 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I was thinking about him as I was about to release this piece, because I was like, dude, I wouldn't know about this artist probably if it wasn't for him. So I hit him up and I just told him basically like, "Hey, got this piece coming out, and I just, want to give you a shout because you put me onto him originally,
That's really cool.
And so like, I think those types of things, maybe like the 20-something me like would not have hit him up.
Okay.
And so that's maybe something I just wish I'd done better, is like connect with people when you're thinking of them.
I like that. You speak my language. I'm notorious for calling people. I call people when I drive, like even if it's like a 10-minute drive, I'll call them and be like, "Hello."
She does that so many times. It's a fact that our generation, at least the generation we're in, we like to prefer text over call. And anytime Rhea calls me, I'm just like, "What? Hi, Rhea, is everything okay?" Like,
pick up every time. It's fine.
I for some reason run the other direction to call someone, but texting all game for. So I think this is a good lesson for me as well. Like, pick up the damn phone and dial the number that you want to dial and chat with your friend. It doesn't hurt.
Totally. And sometimes you're not in the headspace to talk, and that's okay. And that's totally fine. And I also think like connecting with someone can also be text, right? If you're thinking of them, and it can be what your preferred mode of communication. And the reality is like sometimes you're not feeling like having a conversation for a while, and it's hard to say that. So you just need to screen their call and give them a call later.
Yeah. Akash, I had a question for you, and this is something that is probably touching on one of our topics that we had in the past. So our second episode deals with workplace friendships and navigating all about workplace friendships. And this is something Rhea and I are figuring out ourselves. Like, there's no rule book to navigating workplace friendships. And I'm curious to know how you've navigated, maybe even succeeded in making really good workplace friends. If not, have there been any like monumental lessons that you've learned in the past, couple years in the industry?
Yeah. I mean, I think that with workplace friendships, it's so natural sometimes because you literally spend the bulk of your time with these folks, right? And that's just kind of the new reality sometimes when you transition into the work world. But I think one caution that I've learned through different workplaces I've been in is sometimes those friendships can slip into the like water cooler negativity complaining zone, and that can be a little dangerous, and you can not even like realize what that's doing to you like mental health wise. And so I think that it's good to put your foot forward and like build connections with people you work with. I think it's also important to have some boundaries and just be aware of like when those relationships are feeling like healthy, and when maybe they're just becoming like an extension of work, when you're just like going to grab drinks and you want it to feel relaxing. It just becomes like an extension of the day, you know? And so definitely like have had to draw that line sometimes just through experience.
I love that you said that, because I think that was actually a huge topic that we talked about during that podcast, was like, you want to change those workplace friendships into fun friendships, but a lot of times people don't know when to like draw the hard line. Like, you got to stop talking about work at one point or the other. And
Yeah.
if you don't, it just is like a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially with
Yeah.
alcohol involved, right? Like that's slippery slope.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say too, like just looking back on some of my workplace friendships that have sustained, a lot of them are connected to like activities that are completely unrelated to the workplace. You know, like one of my closest friends is like a sports nut, kind of like me, and like we've played a lot of basketball together, and we've like done a lot of just like watching games or, you know, talking about sports, and like that's like kind of what I'm talking about. Is like that will feel relaxing. It's not like, hey, we're talking about the students and lessons and different, you know, politics that are playing out. And so there might be some of that, but like in general, I think that finding people that you can talk to about things that you're really interested in outside of work can be healthy.
Yeah, I love that. So the next thing we have, which you kind of touched upon a little bit earlier, was how friendships kind of change as you start dating a little bit more significantly, and what it really means when you have a significant other. And I'm realizing that I never said this before, but his significant other is my cousin, and they recently got married this July. It was probably like the most fun wedding I've ever been to, and people still talk about it nonstop. But yeah, what did that look like for you?
So I got to be careful what I say now. Okay.
Yeah. It's all going back to her. This is actually just her telling me what to ask you. No.
I think I hear her ear at the door. Just kind of,
What is he talking about me?
Yeah, right.
I was also going to say, though, your move to Chicago is how you guys met, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think that was.
This is perfect.
Yeah,
we love a good example of how moving cities is great for your personal life.
Yeah, see, like
no.
To anyone who's thinking about moving, I guess, who's listening, here's your sign to take the jump.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think you just have to be open-minded. But dating and friendships, it's definitely, there's a lot there, you know, because I think that for one, you want your significant other to get along with your friends and vice versa, right? That's definitely like a thing that comes up, not like super like quickly in the relationship, but obviously like when you get to a point of like, hey, like you want to come to this and meet such and such friend. I think the thing to do is to be respectful on both sides. I think you never want to like throw the person that you're dating into this pool of like, hey, meet all my friends and be like, I think that you just don't want to rush it sometimes, because you like my approach was to introduce Anna to like one friend who was like in town, or it wasn't like planned or anything. It was just like, hey, you know, we're in this such and such city. What do you think about grabbing lunch with this friend of mine, you know, and or grabbing dinner? And I think that approach worked because it allowed for more like one-on-one time. I can imagine it being really overwhelming to like, first time you're meeting my friends is going to this wedding and like, here's 50 of them or like 100, you know what I mean? And so I think that that's one thing that I would say is like, it can help to like meet friends more one-on-one to build, so that they can build more of a relationship. And I think also like being mindful that things will change with friends and you'll have less time to spend with them, and like you got to be aware of that, right? I think that being in a space where like if you're dating someone and you're like wanting to spend more time with your friends, you should be aware of that, right? And that might not bode well for the future of that relationship, and that's okay, you know. On the flip side, right, if you're noticing that like your partner isn't getting along with friends, I think it can be, and I've seen this in like some of my friends who get in relationships, like it's really tough. it's a really tough situation to be in,
Yeah.
where like your partner hates such and such, or that person hates your partner. And I've seen it go both ways, where like the friends are wrong, or like your partner is wrong, you know, and it ends up becoming like messy, you know. But yeah, that's kind of a lot there.
In that type of situation, like what, and I don't know if you've seen your friends come out of it successfully, but what have you seen people typically do that has worked or hasn't worked to kind of navigate that and also not make the wrong choice?
I think that oftentimes you do learn the hard way in some of those situations, where like I've seen it where a friend of mine, she was dating someone who like didn't want her to hang out with her guy friends, like from college, and like it was turned out to be pretty manipulative, and like but that lesson wasn't learned immediately, right? Like I think that there were some times where like we just didn't see her, and like it was because of that. And then I think there's situations on the flip side where like there's a new partner, and like guy friends aren't always the most like understanding. Like they're like, dude, come on, like hang out with your homies, hang out with your bros, and like turns out you're absolutely wrong, and like this person is better for your friend than you guys are. And so I think that like there will be missteps, and there will be like assumptions you make that you'll have to check, or maybe you'll be the person that's like, I told you so, and like yeah, you know, like it's probably going to happen in both ways. So I think like, I guess, you know, advice on what could go right. I think it's just important when you are meeting someone to one, check some of the assumptions you're making, and like pay attention to like why you think the person is wrong for your friend, if that's where your head's at, and check that against other people that have like interacted with the partner, and see like where their head's at. And also in some cases, like trust your gut. Like if you're getting like a really bad read from someone, your friend might not be ready to hear that.
Yeah.
But like you might just need to give the person some space, and like tell the person honestly, like, hey, I'm here for you, but like honestly, being around you with this person isn't really working right now. And I think, you know, that's a really hard thing to do. I'm not going to sit up here and be like, I've done that a lot, but like I think that's the right move to make, is to be like honest and share where your head's at, if you really have like gone through that process of checking assumptions and still feel strongly.
Yeah. No, I definitely kind of relate to that, because we had a friend like that a while back, and he eventually broke up with his girlfriend, and then we all were like, yeah, we didn't really like her, and you kind of disappeared or like acted differently. And he was like, well, if you guys had told me that, I would have realized it and ended it months ago. So we were like, oh, great.
Yeah.
You know what I feel just listening to you, Akash, from this side? I feel like I'm going through like a life lesson situation right now. And I hope our listeners who are listening to this, I hope they're about the same age as us, like listening to Akash, like, damn, this is what I should be doing in the next couple of years. Because like, as you're speaking, I'm just like making mental notes, just like telling myself, Apoorva, you've got to get your shit together. And this is how you're going to have to act in certain situations. This is great advice that you're giving us. I love it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad it's resonating. And I'm not going to say like I've been perfect and executed on all these things, but I think that it's real situations. And I think honestly, just to kind of speak to it, this goes for dating, but it also goes for a friend that's partying too much, or, you know, a friend that's like in too deep in some situation where you're seeing unhealthy behavior, you're seeing things go left, and you care. So like you want to do something, but it's like just a hard situation to read. And I'll also say, and this is like another touchy subject that I had definitely went through like later in my 20s, when there's like loss, you know, like family loss, like someone loses a parent, or someone loses like has something tragic happen in their life, and that's like a really new situation and hard to read. Like how can you be a good friend to this person in this situation, you know? So
That's a really good topic because I don't think that's something that has crossed our minds. Ironically, it wasn't a close friend, but it was like someone in college I knew whose mom passed away just today that I saw. And I even like leaving the comment on Instagram, I was like, I don't know
Feel
one
comfortable.
if this is appropriate to like what do you say? Like it's such a interesting new thing.
Yeah.
100%. I remember a friend, she lost her dad and I think posted about it. And I remember being kind of frozen, like just like you're describing, and being like, maybe I just give this person space, I don't reach
Yeah.
out. And I remember not reaching out. And then, like, when I saw this person next, kind of bringing it up, and it was fine, you know, but I think I hung with it and there was no reason to. Like,
Yeah.
it's not complicated. Or I'm building it up, right? The person would want to hear from you and would
Yeah.
want to hear
Yeah.
that you're thinking of them. And I think that that's, if I could go back and say that to myself, then I would say that. Just like reach out. You don't need to overstep and like call them or whatever, but just kind of sharing your messages to them directly
Yeah.
can be really meaningful if you're thinking of them.
Yeah, I can jump in on that actually. One of my closest friends, two of them, but very recently, one of their parents passed, and it was not necessarily the easiest time for them, obviously. So we kind of try not to talk about it too much, but any occasion that we can check in on that friend, we're always just like, we're here for you. Just a message telling that person that, you know, all of us are thinking of you and keeping that relationship going, because loss is such a hard thing. And when you know as a person that there are friends around you who love you and are proud of the strength that you've displayed, I think that's enough in itself to push that person to get through. So yeah.
Two things I'll say, or maybe one thing that I've learned and I feel like I'm still trying to put into practice is like, if you get invited to a funeral or a memorial, or if you get invited to a wedding, go. Like,
Yeah.
It's something that, like, there's a few that I look back on in my 20s where I can't even remember the reason why I didn't show up. I just remember that I didn't, and it bugs me. And I mean, okay, there might be some you get invited to and you'll be like, why was I invited to this? If that comes up, sure, there's some exceptions here. But if it's someone that invites you, do your best to show up, because those are like moments in people's lives that are just like so large, and I think it's worth like being part of it.
That's valuable advice. Yeah.
So we have one more question for you that I actually just thought of before we jump into our rapid fire round.
Okay.
But so one thing that we've kind of noticed, and actually we vent about a decent amount to each other, is as we've also gone into this phase of life, like everyone is now making a different amount and you continue on different paths. And we've seen people who have been close, still want to be close or whatever. Now it's kind of just a different narrative. How do you deal with the new discrepancies in terms of income or what you want to do, or even trips and that kind of stuff?
Damn, that's a good question. That's definitely a reality and something that I experienced, because I definitely had friends who were going into finance and consulting, and I was teaching, you know, so there was a definite discrepancy in income. I think that the main thing is to like communicate about it, you know, if there's things that are coming up, and like it's a sticky, it's a tricky topic to like wade into. But I do think that, you know, if you're planning a trip together, and someone's taking the lead who's just like got unlimited bankroll, being able to like communicate with them. I actually had this happen with a friend who I was like planning a bachelor party and wasn't being like that mindful of like, this is going to cost this much, it's going to cost that much. And the friend hit me up and was just like, hey, you know, I need to like budget for the trip, and like, can you give me a heads up of like how much you think it's going to be for the weekend? And I was like, that's a badass move. And I didn't always put that into practice when I was in my early 20s. But I liked that approach. And I think it's like a nice way to like also get the organizers to be mindful of it and be like ahead of time, instead of just being like, we're gonna go to this top restaurant and that top restaurant. Just be like, hey, give me a ballpark, and like, just so I can cover it. And then that's, again, like just a form of communication of asking the question of like, how much should I budget for it? I need to know ahead of time, because that's just the way I'm running my finances, you know? And you don't have to say much more than that, because finances are super private, but I think that's a good question to ask.
Did you ever feel like, especially being also in like San Francisco, but like having like tech or finance friends while you could have been doing something more meaningful, but giving you a different lifestyle, did you ever feel weird about that, or feel like you couldn't keep up or anything?
I think that for me, like, I rarely had that thought of like, like I can't keep up necessarily, because I always tried to like make sure I was making decisions that supported my ability to live the life I wanted to. But yeah, definitely there was times where I would like meet folks while I was out and hear what they were doing, and I wouldn't even define it as like one's meaningful and one's not, but just kind of hear like what they were doing and how they were seeming like making so much doing that thing, and like judging it, you know, and being like, what the hell, like, for real? And I think that definitely is something that I experienced, in terms of just like having that outsider view and not fully understanding it. I think it's important to like have the perspective of, you know, what folks are doing, like not like necessarily like looking up to people that are making a ton more money, because we're all like struggling through our process of moving up the ladder in whatever profession we've chosen. And that's just a common struggle. Like, and I think that's something I've definitely realized, that you don't have the perspective on when you're coming up, and you're just like, wow, this fool's making X amount, and this dude's company's just sold, and this fool's CEO. But like, I think that's honestly something that you should anchor to, is like, no, we're all figuring it out. None of us have it figured out.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of advice, especially for anyone in their mid-20s. Okay, cool. So with that, we're gonna move on. You're good, to our rapid fire round. We'll see how this works, because it's our first time doing
First one, yeah. We were brainstorming questions for rapid fire, and we're like, is this even a rapid fire question? I feel like this is a 5-line answer to this question, but we'll just shoot them at you, because just go for it.
So basically, we'll just kind of like give you a this or that, and then you just tell us instinctively which one.
Okay.
All right, cool. Apoorva, take it away.
All right. First question: quality or quantity of friends?
Quality, for sure.
Okay. Next one is: more important to have aligned values or aligned interests?
Aligned values, but I think it's harder to figure out what folks' values are. So I think start with interests is what I would say.
Okay.
That was deeper. I liked it though.
I know. Okay, so does age matter in friendships?
No, I don't think so. I think I encourage folks to be friends with people of all ages. I actually find that like people, especially workplace, like don't just hang out with the 20-somethings. Like have conversations with people that are a lot older or younger than you.
Love that. Okay, do you think the geographical background matters in friendships?
Like where they grew up?
Yeah.
I think it plays a role, but I don't think you should make a determination on friendships based on that.
Okay. And during a conflict, you stand your ground or you agree to disagree?
Especially if it's like a good friend.
Yeah.
I'm more of the like conciliatory agree to disagree. I wish I could stand my ground more, but yeah, I'm just like, cool, let's leave it.
Let's just get it over with. Okay, last one. Best friends remain as best friends, or is it fun if best friends are converted as life partners?
Whoa, that's an interesting question. Best friends remain as best friends or converted as life partners. I mean, I think about best friends for life, like I think that, you convert them. Life partnership doesn't mean you're living with the person every day. I mean, that's definitely one side of it, but I also think that you should try your best to sustain your friendships over the years.
That's awesome. We were hoping you give us the life partner answer because Rhea said that you were married to your best friend. So we were just like,
Yeah, for sure.
I wrote that one and I was like, I didn't know the answer to this.
But Akash, every time we do wrap up an episode, we have 3 takeaways, and not to put you on the spot, but we're going to. Do you have, I guess, 3 takeaways that you've learned over the course of your time with dealing with friendships, navigating around all of the spectrums of events in your life so far? Do you have 3 takeaways that you have to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think about things I've shared in this conversation. I'd be curious what y'all's takeaways are from the many things that I've said. But I think the things that I'm coming back to and thinking about are just what I said about, like, if you're thinking about someone, hit them up, let them know, life's too short for misconnections. Just like, let the person know it's a good way to reconnect. The piece I gave on, like, show up to major life events, just I think that's something like parents learn, is like showing up is whatever they say 70-80% of the work. I think that's also true for you when you're in your 20s, is like showing up to things is a big part of sustaining friendships. And then the other side of it is giving space and being aware that if in the present, when you're 23 or 25, you might not have that excellent relationship with the friend that you once thought of as your best friend, things can change. And they may change for the better, or they may change for the worse. And you might not have as tight of a bond with someone that you thought you'd be cool with. But you gotta have that mentality of, like, it's okay. And there's space that you can create for people to build and grow the way they need to.
I love that.
I
That's
love
a
the
great
last one.
takeaway.
Yeah. Those are
They
really good.
also, like, you didn't do this on purpose because you haven't heard our episodes, but they actually almost 1-for-1 line up with each of our episodes. So that fit perfectly.
This is like a good mood booster for both of us, because we're just like, okay, I feel like both of us are gonna jump off this call and be like, I think we're doing something right now.
Good. Yeah, that's the other thing. Being in your 20s, you can get down on yourself so much and think about, like, am I doing stuff fast enough? Am I advancing? Am I, I think, like, there's a lot of pressure you put on yourself. And that's true of any phase of life. I'm not going to say I'm not putting pressure on myself right now, but I think that it's important to have the perspective of, like, making mistakes is okay. And not everything needs to be, you're not going to hit everything, hit the nail on the head every time. And I hope I shared some of that, like, I didn't do certain things, and there were certain life events I didn't show up to. And so that's what's allowed me to have the awareness that that's something I want to do and try to make happen going forward.
Well, I love that. And with that, thank you so much for being our first guest.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you both.
Thanks so much.
We do want to shout out your podcast because I don't think anyone said the name on it. So it's South Asians Love Rap, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
Everyone should also go check that out.
Yeah, for sure. You can follow South Asians Love Rap on Instagram. I have 10 episodes out. It's been a number of months since I've put out a new episode because I've been doing some other podcast work, just kind of freelance, but definitely check out those old episodes if you're interested in that concept.
Hey, but that's what makes it hype. You have to get everyone to go listen to those and then get hype for season 2.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're slowly getting the hang of this podcast marketing thing now.
Exactly. You know, just I think you're already onto something. You know, when you I think cross marketing is always good. You have someone else on, you can be guests somewhere else, and it's just how people become aware of things.
Yeah,
I love that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Akash. You've been such a breath of fresh air. We literally needed another person to brainstorm, jump off of ideas and advice, and this has been fabulous for all of us and our listeners, I hope.
Yeah, no, I'm glad, and I think you both loved your questions and think that it led to a good conversation. So I'm glad we did it.
Yay.